Hi everyone. Up until this point we've been modeling more abstract shapes in Maya, and so now in this video I'd like to try modeling something that exists in real life from photos. And so I thought we would model this chair. So here you can see some photos I downloaded from the internet of the Herman Miller bumper chair. And I think what's most important is we have a front view, a side view, and a back view of the chair. And we're going to actually bring these photos into Maya, line them up, and model the chair based on these three photos. What's missing is actually a view from the top, which would be nice, but I think we can get it pretty close using just these three. So in Maya, let's switch to Maya real quick. I'm going to press spacebar and move into my four views. So looking back at these photos, let's put my front view, let's put it into front here. So I'm going to move my mouse over to the front view window, press spacebar, and let's go to view, image plane, import image, and let's browse to this and find your image, and let's say it's, which one was it? I think this one is good. Wait, this one's slightly larger, so let's use this one. And okay, so that looks good. I'm going to press spacebar, and you can see it appears in the front view. In the top view, so you can see what it is. It's an image plane that's floating in the scene. And in the front view, it looks like this. Perspective view, it looks like a flat plane. So let's bring in another image. Let's bring in the side image by clicking in the side window and going to View, Image Plane, Import Image. And let's bring in this image. So it's not quite a side view, it's a little bit of a perspective because both of these sides should actually be the same height, but this is close enough. So in this window, let's see what's going on here in this perspective. Let's actually move this a bit over to the side. So we create something like this. And let's actually select this one, and in your attribute editor, let's turn alpha gain down slightly so it becomes transparent to like 0.5. So I select this image plane and turn my alpha gain down to 0.5. And so now in each view, let's move this plane. Sometimes you have to press Q, the letter Q, when it gets stuck. Let's move this image plane back a little bit. And why don't we turn the grid off in the perspective view? Let's actually go ahead and turn the grid off in all the views. So we have these two, and then we actually have a back shot where I'm going to actually switch to, in my front view, I'm going to actually switch to a back view. So I'm going to go to Panels, Orthographic, New, Back. And in my back view, I'm going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and let's bring in the final image, which was this one, I believe. And although this is a different chair, slightly, it's got a different base. The upper part of the chair is the same. I just couldn't find a rear view of the same chair that we were using for the other photos. So now let's with this back image plane selected, let's turn down the transparency in the attribute editor over here. Let's turn this to 50, and so you can see the overlapping of the front and the back. So what we want to do is let's maximize this window by pressing spacebar, and let's size up the two images so that they're kind of in the same scale. So with this image selected, let's scale it up and move it over so that they overlap. I have snapping on. I need to turn it off because I want to move it not so incrementally. So now so one of them is kind of crooked. I think I'm actually going to rotate this image slightly. So I'm going to rotate. So I'm really only looking at the top and the bottom here, and then eventually I'll match up the sides. So I'm just scaling and rotating until I find something that more or less matches in both views. So I'm also assuming that the perspective of this shot is somewhat going to distort it, so I'm going to get it kind of close like this for now. And let's leave that how it is. So let's go back and let's make a layer now. I'm going to press spacebar and go into perspective view. So I have these three shots. I have the back is all the way back here. I'm going to slide that up a little bit here. And I'm going to go over here to my channel box and click this button, create a new layer, and my new object, my existing plane, is put on that layer. So I'm going to double click and rename my layer to chair, hold on, bitmap chair rear. And I'm going to click this V button to turn off visibility. And then I'm going to make another layer, new layer. I'm going to select this first, double click, bitmap chair front, and turn that off. And click that, make another layer, and let's call that bitmap chair side. So now I have each image plane on a separate visibility layer, and I can turn them on and off as necessary. So I think let's turn on this side, and we should start working from there. So we're going to press spacebar and spacebar again to move into the side view here. So let's start with a cube in the scene. And we'll go into vertex mode. And start moving these points around. We can turn to 4, so look at the wireframe. So I'm only going to pay attention to this outside profile and not so much attention to the back profile for now. So in perspective view, something like that, and I'm going to go to edge mode, click one of the edges, and then press shift right click, insert edge loop tool. And I went to the options just to make sure, just leave this on default. And I'm going to click here, and it's going to draw an extra ring around all four faces of this cube. So let me do that again. I'm going to Control Z this, select the edge, shift right click, insert edge loop, and then I'm going to click, hold, and drag to where I want this edge loop to be. So I want to leave it somewhere here because I'm trying to make the bend in the chair like this. So from here I'm going to go to face, and I press Q just to make sure I'm out of the command. Sometimes the command will keep repeating until I press Q to quit. So in face mode, I'm going to select this face, and I'm going to extrude the face. And I'm going to press this little circle here at the top to make it an absolute transform, which means that it'll extrude horizontal and not normal to the surface. So in side view, I'm going to look at it again, side view. Let's press Q to quit. And so now I have something like this. So back in vertex mode, I'm always cross-window dragging because I know that when I select one polygon like this, there's actually another there's actually another vertex behind it. So I'm always clicking and dragging, so I select both of them at the same time. So let's move this a little up here. Let's move this over here, and let's go to the extents of the lip. I'm going to go back and make the lip later, but this thing that wraps around here being the lip I'm talking about. So let's move this up, something like that. Move this down. Okay, so it seems like I may need another edge loop here. So the reason I'm inserting these edge loops is I can strategically add more detail where I need it and have less detail where I don't. So I'm going to press Q to end that command, vertex mode, and then now I'm going to drag this down over here. Let's move this up a little. Move this out like this. And now I'm going to add another edge loop up here. Q to quit. Vertex mode. I'm going to move this back a little. So I think I need more detail here and here. So I'm going to add an edge loop going vertically this way. So I'm having difficulty selecting this edge, and I think it might be because I'm touching this image plane in the back. So why don't we go over to our channel box and click this, which will lock the image plane. You have to keep clicking it until it says actually R. And then at this point, it's visible, but you can't select it. So now in object mode, go to edge. That's funny. Go to edge, and then insert edge loop going this way, somewhere in the middle, like that. And then I'm going to insert another edge here, somewhere down here. Press Q to quit. So you can see the shape of the chair slowly coming into shape. I think maybe I need another one there, but let's not do that yet. I'm just going to try to get that shape right. So now to preview it, we can select it and press 3. And that's the object smoothed. So if you look at it like this, it sort of looks like this odd-shaped bean. And then when we press 1 on the keyboard, it goes back to our original. And when you press 3, it switches to this smooth version. So this is one of the more powerful features in polygon modeling and in Maya in general, is that we can quickly do organic shapes with a relatively rectilinear underlay. So I think if I switch back to, I'm going to press 5 to switch back to shaded, but then I'm going to go to shading, X-ray. So the chair it's getting there, but it's a little bit, I could use a little bit more refinement, especially, so you see the difference when I look at it in 1, it seems to exceed this corner's size, but when I press 3, it's much smaller. So because it's using an algorithm that cuts corners to smooth it. So I'm going to have to look at it in 3 now and select the vertex in 3 and sort of drag it up. So even though in 1 mode it's much larger now, in 3 mode it's almost exact, and we're going to end up being in 3 mode. So I would say I stay in 1 no matter what I'm modeling. I'm constantly moving back and forth to make sure that both models aren't self-intersecting and they're both looking pretty clean. So I'm just dragging this corner up. So I think we're pretty close with this profile. You know, there's a couple little details here which we can come back and refine. But yeah, I think that's pretty close for the side view. I actually missed a corner right here. You can see in this underlay photo that the lip sort of comes up here, and so it's a little hard to see. I'm going to hide that like the lip is this sort of thick all the way around. So I'm going to grab this and pull that up a little bit. So the nice thing about Maya is that you can go back and constantly sculpt the shape while keeping the point count relatively low. Okay, that looks better. So now I'm going to switch to the front view and take a look at what's going on here. So from side it looks alright. From the front and any other angle it doesn't look like the seat at all. So let's turn our panels, this back view, let's switch to front view. So you click panels, orthographic, front. And let's turn off the bitmap side and let's turn on bitmap front and press spacebar to maximize this. And let's move this so that it's sitting in the center of the picture. And we'll zoom in a little and see what's going on here. So this chair is symmetrical, so it doesn't make sense that we model both halves. I would rather model one half and then mirror the other half. So let's split that model real quick into half. So I'm going to go to Edge. Let's look at it in 1. It's a bit less confusing. let's go into Edge, Shift right click, Insert Edge Loop Options, and I'm going to go to Multiple Edge Loops, and I'm going to click 1. And number of edge loops, I'm going to type 1. And so from when I do that and click on this edge, it's going to force it to split the model directly down the middle. You'll find that you can't drag it back and forth. It splits exactly down the middle. So with that split, now I can delete all these faces. Press delete right there. And so now the model is open like this. I'm going to select the model, and let's move the pivot point. Actually, it's fine. It's in the center. So I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special, and let's make it an instance, and let's scale it in the Y direction. Let's mirror it across the Y direction. So I'm going to put -1 for the scale, and number of copies 1. So let's duplicate special like that and see what happens. Okay, that didn't work. So I'm going to Control Z it, and I'm going to go to, let's move the pivot point. Let's put it right here. So if you remember how to do that, we turn on snap, press the D key, and middle mouse click. Let's make it there in the corner. So let's try it again. Let's go to Edit, Duplicate Special, and make sure Translate is 0, 0, 0, Rotate is 0, 0, 0, Scale is -1, 1, 1. So now this is going to work like this. And this may look like the previous model, but as you can see, when you do something to one side of the model now, it's mirrored. My snap was still on. It's mirrored on the other side. So now we have to only worry about modeling half the model. So let's look back at our side view. Let's get the shape of this chair correct. So I selected all the vertexes inside and I'm dragging it like this. Switch to 4. And so I feel like, let's look at it 3 real quick. Okay, so moving back into perspective view. Let's take a look real quick. So let's move it out to its extents right here. I just quickly paused the video to save the file. You guys should save the file too. Get in the habit of saving often and saving multiple versions of the same file, so you can go back and alter progress and not have to start over if you have multiple copies saved at different points. So now let's take these vertices and start pulling them in like this. And so that's happening, which isn't good. Well, it's actually fine. But so sometimes it helps if you look at it in perspective to see what's happening. So I'm going to drag these in perspective. Move these out a little bit. Actually, I'm not going to move them at all. I'm going to move these in. I'm going to move these in like this. So let's look at the entire model on 3. Okay, it's getting there. So there's no right way to make this model, and I am making this up as I go. I haven't tried this before, so there may be some mistakes. So I'm going to insert an edge loop here to get the handrail. Doesn't matter where, just put it somewhat close to the edge. And I think this mirrored side is not necessary right now, so I'm going to delete it. I'm going to turn on my wireframe on shaded. And I think I'm going to delete all these faces here. So from here, 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 and probably here, and delete those faces. So I went into face mode, selected, and then shift selected all the faces, and I pressed delete. So now I'm going to build manually these inner faces for this seat cutout. So in edge mode, I'm going to select 1, 2, 3, 4 of these edges, shift right click, and I'm going to extrude the edge. Keep face together on, and I'm going to click this little circle here to make it an absolute extrusion. And I'm going to turn my snap off and drag down just a little bit, like that. Press Q to quit, go into vertex mode, select this point, and turn snap back on up here. I'm going to move it to there, so it snaps to that point. Press Q, and then I'm going to cross window drag across both of these points. There's actually 2 points there, and I'm going to shift right click, merge vertices, Q to quit. And then in object mode, so I'm going to repeat the same thing again here. With this edge, I'm going to shift right click, extrude edge, click this circle to make it an absolute extrusion, and go straight down. And then look at it in 4 mode. Go into vertex on that corner and shift merge vertices. So now let's look at it again in 3 real quick. Okay, that's starting to get there. So on this edge, I'm going to select this, not the final one. Let's leave that for later. Shift right click, extrude edge, click that circle to do absolute, and I'm going to go this way, sideways. Press Q to quit. And now I'm going to select this vertex and this vertex. I'm going to cross window drag and select both of them. And I'm going to show you a new technique here called shift right click, merge vertices to center. And that averages the location of 2 vertices and puts them to the center. So for this final missing face, I'm going to select this edge and shift right click, extrude edge, and click this circle to do an absolute direction, and click it out here. Now I wanted to show you real quick, if I press 3 right now, there's something wrong with it here and here because I haven't merged these 2 vertices here and here. So I'm going to switch back to 1, select both of these in vertex mode, and shift right click, merge vertices to center. And then I'm going to select these 2, this one and this one. I'm going to press G to repeat the last command, which was merge vertices to center. So there we have it. It's a little bit weird in the back here, but we'll fix that in a minute. But it's looking pretty good. Let's take a look at this back side of the chair. Let's make it a little more chair-like. In 1, we can start pulling some of these points around some more. Let's move, whoops, I had my snap on, so let's disable that. Let's actually select both these points, move it back slightly. And let's take these 2 points. First, let's move them down so that it forms more of a back of the seat that still follows this profile a little bit. And let's actually go kind of deeper because I know there's a cushion that has to be accommodated. So I'm selecting these points and moving them down. So you saw that there's an intersection here which isn't good. So I'll take this point alone and move it in just a little bit. Also, I can switch to 4 and view it just to see what's going on inside here. Switch, press 5 to move back. And let's get these final 2 in the front here. Okay, so on 3, starting to look like that. It's getting closer. So looking at this chair in top view, I'd really like this middle row of vertices to line up straight. So I'm going to select all of them, and in my tool settings, I'm going to go to Move Snap Settings and uncheck Retain Component Spacing. So now I'm going to drag with this arrow. Well, I'm going to turn my snap on real quick. Drag with this arrow, turn the snap on, drag with this arrow, and then boom. Like they're all in a line, and I'm going to turn my snap off, and in elevation I'm going to move them slowly back here. So you can see that by turning off Retain Component Spacing, I lined them all up in a row. So let's do some vertex cleanup before we rejoin this chair. So looking at it in 1, I think I'd like to clean up some of this, because I think the next point is to put this seam in and to build this cushion. So to get the seam correct, I'd like this point to probably be a little, this line, this edge to be a little straighter. So let's look at it on 1. And let's select this vertex, and this vertex, and just W, turn my snap off, and just move it up ever so slightly to get a rounded corner there. Let's move this whole edge out ever so slightly. So let's be sure in your move tool settings to turn retain component spacing back on in case you turn it off in the last couple of operations. So let's look at it in back view now. So I'm going to press spacebar, and in front view over here I'm going to switch the panel to Panels Orthographic Back 1, and then I'm going to now turn off the front bitmap in my layers and turn on the rear bitmap. Okay, so now we can spacebar and maximize this, and we can see our shape. So this corner is a bit more squared off, so let's press 3 and take a look at what we actually have when it's smooth. And so let's start moving some of these points over. So I'm going to grab them, maybe this whole corner I'm going to grab and move over. Whoops. So when that happened, I needed to turn my point snap off. So I'm going to unclick that and gradually drag it over like this. And you can see it goes in a little like this, so I'm going to subtly pull this point in and this point in like that. And then here, let's take a look at what this is in 1. Okay, I'm going to just move this vertex up slightly, and move this vertex up slightly, and over. Let's move this down a little to get this curve, and let's move this down a little right there. Okay, pretty close on this side. But now when I move back and let's look at the front view, turn off the rear and look at the front, it's not going to line up. So I suspect there's something a bit odd with, let's say, the perspective of this photo versus the rear photo. So let's maybe move some of these back again, and we'll try to split the difference between the two photos. So it might help if I take a look at what's going on one. So I'm gonna move this down a little bit. Let's move this back in like this, in like this, and look at it on 3 again. Okay. Let's look at these and move this up a little bit. And let's move this corner out a bit more. Okay, so let's look at it in perspective. Panels, perspective, perspective. Okay, let's get this chair back together. Take a look at what it looks like as a whole chair. Let's move this pivot point with their snap-on holding D again. Let's move it to that. Whoops. Let's move it to the actual corner, so you can see snap there. And then since these are all in a straight line, it should mirror across this line. So I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special 000 for everything except Scale -1 here. So that should do it like that. Let's look at it in 3. Okay, not bad. This edge is a little too flat. I can see this edge in this view being a lot more taller. So let's see if we can fix that. So in one mode, let's take a look. I think we should bring this point up like this. Let's turn snap off. And then bring up this middle point. And bring it forward a little bit. Okay, that looks okay. So the next technique I'm going to show you is creasing. So Maya has this feature called crease. I'm going to show you, go into edge mode, select your edges by shift clicking, and shift right click and crease tool, and then middle mouse drag. And then let's go around and continue selecting some of these edges. And middle mouse clicking and dragging. So that looks okay. Let's go around all the way around like this. And so I actually creased some edges I didn't mean to. So let's select these and shift crease and drag, middle mouse drag to the left to uncrease. And so now let's select these inner ones like this. And you don't have to click all the way to the, drag all the way to the right. There's probably a middle ground like this, which is more appropriate. Like that. Okay, well, this corner is a bit not like that corner, so let's see what we can do about that. So let's actually uncrease this corner. Shift right click, crease left. So that actually looks way better. I'm going to go around and do the same thing with this bottom corner because I have the feeling it's the same thing. Shift right click, crease, middle mouse button, left drag. Okay. And then maybe we adjust this point here. Let's take a look at what it's doing on one, and then let's sort of slightly soften it like that. Maybe that's a little too much. Okay, I think that's pretty close looking. So a lot of it is just spinning it around and evaluating it. Let's take a look at the side view again and see if we're still on track. Okay, so this edge looks a little sharp, so I think we want to pull that back a little. Pull this down. So we're constantly moving between the views and checking to see if it matches on all sides. Okay. So then this piece here is looking a little bumpy. So let's pull that down a little bit. And okay, let's save the file. So now let's combine the two halves so we can get some of this other detail, this little lip between the two surfaces of the cushion. So we select the left half and we shift select the right half, and then we shift right click and select combine. Now this will make it into one object, but we still have to weld the vertexes, because even though it's combined, there's actually two vertices here that aren't welded yet. So to make sure that this is smoothed correctly, we have to go in and weld all the vertexes. So let's switch into wireframe mode and go into vertex and select this first one, and then shift right click, merge vertices, merge vertices. And then we go and press G and do that to the next one. And we just go around to each one and press G, because that'll repeat the last command. As you can see, when we're doing that, the way it's smoothing changes because it's being welded into one vertex. You want to do that all the way around the middle loop, and it'll actually look pretty much the same, but when we smooth it some more, it'll be clear what the difference is. So let's select all the inner faces here of the cushion. Remember, we're shift left clicking to add more to our selection. Now we shift right click and extrude face and drag the blue arrow to go inwards a little bit. And let's press 3 while we're at it to take a look at what we're doing there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Press Q to quit. And now I want to go in and add this detail, this seam line. So I'm going to go into Edge. Between these two lines, I'm going to shift right click and let's go into Insert Edge Loop Tool Options and make sure we're on relative distance from edge. And I'm going to press 1 to go back into unsmooth view and left click and drag to draw this seam and then let it go somewhere like that. Let's take a look really quick by pressing 3 about what this looks like. 1, 3. Okay, we can press Q to quit. And let's unselect everything. Go into object mode. So sometimes you see, it still thinks it's in face mode, but then let's go into face mode and just select everything and then unselect everything. Sometimes it gets stuck. It's kind of a glitch in Maya, but you want to do that to refresh it. So let's look at this in smooth mode. You can see that looks pretty good. So let's take this edge and shift double click to select the entire thing. And then we want to shift right click to extrude face, and let's drag this blue arrow and drag it inwards. And we're just a little bit to make that seam. Okay, that looks pretty good. I also think I might want to try and maybe decrease this loop a little. So let's shift double click, shift double click, shift double click, and shift right click, crease middle mouse drag, and let's undo that a little bit. Okay, great. So next we're going to build this cushion that's sitting on the chair. Right click, go into face mode, and let's select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these cushions here. Now we're going to use a new command called duplicate face. That's also located in shift right click, duplicate face, and let's go down to the options and make sure that separate duplicated faces is on, and you can leave offset at 0. And we press duplicate. So now when that happens, it switches the model back to 1, and if you look at it on 1, you should have two pieces now. You should have the chair and this piece that we duplicated based on those faces. Now the chair looks a little messed up because in Maya sometimes when that happens it doesn't keep track of the creased faces so well. So we'll go back eventually and fix that. But let's select this cushion and press Alt H. So once again, that's the Alt key plus H plus the letter H to isolate it. And let's select all the edges and shift right click, crease, middle mouse button drag, and uncrease that one section. And now let's select all the faces, shift right click, extrude face, and let's drag up on the up arrow to inflate the pillow a little bit. Press Q to quit, and now you can press Control Shift H or go up to Display Show All to reveal everything again. So let's highlight the chair again and let's fix some of this creasing that happened. So Alt H will hide the object again, and now we have to go back and crease the edges that were supposed to be creased and uncrease the edges that got messed up. So shift right click, crease, and so while the command is still running, we can just select the next edge and middle mouse drag. So I'm going to shift select these two, middle mouse drag, and maybe this one. I think we undid this whole thing, so we can, let's shift click that. And it's okay if we select more than necessary, because if we uncrease it, so let's say I selected that edge extra, and also shift click and select this edge, but then I'll middle mouse drag, middle mouse button left drag, and then it'll uncrease it all. So sometimes this happens like here, but it's a pretty easy fix. So I'm going to just go around and do some more of these. Actually, it's to be determined whether these edges need it or not. I don't think so. Let's just sort of leave it like this for now. Oh, also I want to get this one and then these two. And undo this corner. Alright. So we have the line, and if we control shift H, we'll reveal the cushion again. And now let's take a look at the cushion real quick. So I'm going to press Q to just make sure I've quit the command. Select this object. It's going to modify center pivot, and then press 4. And then right click and go into vertex mode. Well, that turned both objects into vertex mode. I actually only want the cushion in vertex mode. So let's try that again. So I click somewhere else, click the cushion again. See if you can just get the cushion. It's not cooperating with me here. So when that happens, I'm just going to press Control H to just hide the chair altogether, so I don't have to deal with it. And now I'm going to select this cushion and right click vertex, and I'm going to grab these 4 bottom ones by left window dragging, and let's go back into shaded mode, and then I'm also going to press Control Shift H to unhide the chair now. So now I have what I want selected. Now I can move these vertices down a little bit so it sits a little bit better on the chair. And I'm also going to drag here and shift drag here to select those vertexes, and then I'm going to do a move that I haven't done before. I'm going to scale them down by pressing R and then dragging this in one direction. So I'm going to scale it so it fits a little better in the seat, and maybe I'll bring down these top vertexes down a little bit so there's a little flat surface to the cushion. But so that looks pretty good, I think. So again, there's some edges I missed here with the creasing, so let's just go in and shift right click crease tool and undo that. Okay, so I think that's it. There's a lot more that can be done, let's say, in getting it super close. You can spend a lot of time really finessing some of these details, but I think for the purposes of this tutorial, we can move on to the lower half of the chair now. Let's look at this chair in top view right now. Let's press spacebar and then move over to the top window and press spacebar again. And we're going to make a new cube by pressing this cube button. Quit. And then now that I have my cube here, I'm going to press W to move it. Select it, press W to move it. And let's move it to the center. Let's place this somewhere about there, and we'll scale it down a little bit like this. And then we're also going to rotate it in the Z direction. Let's rotate it by 45 degrees. let's go and just adjust this a little more. Maybe move this back. And let's press spacebar to get out of this view. And let's open up our side view. And let's move this cube about there. In fact, we can turn on our side bitmap, and this will give us an idea about how and where, how big and where we're placing this. Okay, so I think this is a little too big, so let's scale it down. Okay, maybe that's a bit more like it. Okay, and so now we're also gonna, let's right click on this cube. So remember, it's spun 45 degrees like this, and it's coming out like in the other views like this. And in our side view, let's right click, go to vertex, and drag the bottom 4 vertices down like that. And actually, let's drag these down real quick. So what I want to get is the basing massing. There's 1, 2 tiers followed by an X that emerges. So let's get out of this view and let's Alt H just this thing. And so in perspective view, I'm going to select this face on the top here. Whoops. Shift right click, extrude face, and let's just scale this face down a little like that. And then press G to extrude again, and let's pull this up so we can begin to make that smaller tube. So I'm not so concerned about where it sits because I can adjust this once I press Control Shift H to reveal the rest of the chair. And now I'm going to go back to vertex mode and drag these top parts up so it sits inside the chair. And let's look at it inside view. Okay, that's pretty right on. Okay, so let's deal with that for now. Spacebar, and let's go back to perspective view here. Okay, so let's select this face on the bottom and shift right click and extrude down a face, and this is the tier where it'll sprout the 4 legs. So from there, I'm going to press Q. Now that I have these 4 legs, I'm going to select each of these faces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to shift right click and extrude, and I'm going to drag this blue arrow out like here, and I'm going to make sure keep faces together is actually off. Okay, and I'm also, let's scale these faces down a little by clicking this box and then scaling it down like that. And then I'm also gonna, let's do it again. Let's press G to extrude again and go out again like this. And now let's press Q to quit, and let's select these faces on the bottom that have emerged. And we're going to shift right click, extrude face, and extrude down. Like that. And maybe we'll scale these up a little so that they become like little feet. Maybe I'm adjusting it a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. So if we select our object and press 3, it'll give you an idea of what we need to crease, what needs to stay a little bit more hard-edged, and this shaft needs to become a little bit more cylindrical. So let's turn off this rear photo, and let's Alt H the base, and press 3, and let's go to edge mode And let's crease the entire thing. Okay. And so I think it'll actually be easier to uncrease certain objects because I think more of the edges are creased than not. So let's go back and shift select these four, and then if your command is still going, or if it's not, you can press G and then middle mouse drag, and let's uncrease those. And let's go in and select these four corner things, these corner diagonals, and uncrease those. And let's do the same thing with these verticals. 1, 2, 3, 4. Uncrease those. And then I think let's go to these four corners and let's uncrease these, not all the way. I'd say about halfway. And I think we can go and uncrease each of these feet. So that looks. Maybe these corners as well. Okay. And maybe this edge up here. So let's go around and do the same thing for all four. Sometimes it helps to switch back to 1 when you're uncreasing. The selection tool isn't so great when it's being smoothed sometimes. You can also double click, which will try to guess which ones you want to select. Okay, I think that's all of them. Let's press Control-Shift-H to reveal the rest of the chair. Like I said earlier, there's a lot more detail that we could possibly refine this, especially this connection here that I'm not too satisfied with. But I think overall this is pretty close. And it showed you the sort of fundamental techniques to polygon modeling to make this chair. Probably the last thing we'd want to do is actually move this from a low-res smooth preview to a bit of a higher resolution mesh. And so you do that by selecting your object and going to Modify, Convert, Smooth Mesh Preview to Polygons. So you can see it added more faces, and then when you press 3, it'll smooth it yet again. And so you can see that some of the jaggedness from before I smoothed it. Like if you get really close, some of these lines are kind of still very jagged, but if we add more faces, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons, and then we do it again by pressing 3, and then modify, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons, we have an object that has many more faces but is much smoother. So let's go and do the same thing for this cushion. We can we can just select it, press G, press 3, and then G again. And then we do the same thing for this. G, 3, G. And so now we have an object that has many more faces, but it's much smoother. So one way to check how smooth it is we can unclick this wireframe unshaded. You can see that the object itself is actually quite smooth now, and it's ready to be textured and rendered out. So one word of advice that I would give you is I always save a version that's lower resolution, and then I smooth it and save another version that's higher resolution. So the higher resolution one would be for materials, lighting, and rendering, and the lower resolution version I would still use if I wanted to tweak like the design of the chair, or if I wanted to make any modifications to it, because this model being so high res now is actually difficult to pull around, because if you go into Vertex, there's just thousands and thousands of points now. So save both versions, and we're going to come back to this chair towards the end of this course. It'll all come together in a scene where we put together everything that we've been rendering so far. Okay, see you guys in the next video.